Welcome to Warfighter Advanced, Coming Home at Last, a podcast by and for veterans. Warfighter Advance is an organization whose mission is the successful reintegration of every warfighter. I'm Michael Arndt, a Vietnam combat veteran and a member of the board of directors of Warfighter Advance. Welcome to the Warfighter Advance podcast, Coming Home at Last. Joining me today is Octavia Jones. Octavia is an alumna of the program and also a mentor in our program. Welcome, Octavia.
Thank you.
Octavia, begin by talking about your military history and your experience.
Okay. I'm a Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, and I was in the Navy for 22 years. I recently retired about 2 years ago. I was a culinary specialist, so we cooked. We provided meals to the people.
How many deployments were you involved in over those 22 years?
I would have to say 13 deployments, mostly because one of my ships was a forward deployed ship, and that just means our deployment schedule is a little bit different. So we would do 2 deployments a year, 3 to 4 month deployments a year, and being on that ship for 4 years, that is why I had so many. So 13.
Describe events that may have happened during your deployments or during your 22 years that contributed to leading you to Warfighter Advance.
So my very last deployment, the day the ship was getting ready to leave, my grandmother had passed away. While the ship had not left yet, I contacted my chain of command to let them know that my grandmother had passed away. I had told them prior to that she was sick, and that I thought she wasn't going to make it. I had a very close relationship with my grandmother. And just a little bit about my history is that when I was 13 years old, my dad committed suicide, and I found him. And so that experience had shaped who I am, like all the good and all the bad of me. And so in addition to that, it's also the way that I deal with grief. It made it not so much of a healthy thing, like my ways of dealing with grief. So when my grandmother passed away, and they didn't allow me to go to her funeral, even though my relief was there. I had a panic attack. I was rushed down to medical. Even, I don't know, is it EKG they put on your chest? Because all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. It's kind of like, even though I know I'm a chief, I'm still human. And the close relationship that I had with my grandmother, that affected me. And then to have to go out and lead sailors with all of that on me just felt like it was too much. I started to become very angry with the Navy, and even disappointed in myself, because as a chief, we're expected, that's something as a leader, we're expected to be able to be more resilient. And in that moment, I lost resiliency. I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. When I came back, I went to shore duty, and it just made the rest of everything just was different from that point on. The way that my relationship with the Navy had changed because of that moment. And the strange thing is, like, my grandmother, she knew nothing about the military. And one of the things she said to me was that, if I die, you will never be able to go to my funeral. And I was like, Nana, that's crazy. Of course I'd be able to go to your funeral. I've never seen anybody not be able to go to their grandmother's funeral. And so that really, hit me. And, I could just always hear that, always hear that. And so, I went to a therapist. It was that grief, but also all the other grief that I had dealt with, and some other personal things that I'd gone through in the military. One of the reasons why I had never gone to therapy in the past is because I said most people who go to therapy, they get a diagnosis and a pill. And that's something I didn't want, was a diagnosis and a pill. Sometimes you just need to talk things out, and you need somebody to listen. So I went to therapy, and exactly what I got was a diagnosis and a pill. And so at first I was like, I'm not going to take this. The therapist did diagnose me with depression. And to be honest, even though I lost my dad at a young age, and the way that I lost my dad, I would never really categorize myself as depressed. But I was diagnosed with depression, and I really thought at that moment, like, she's a therapist, so, obviously she would know, is my thoughts, that maybe there's signs of depression, I just didn't know were there. So even when the medication was first given to me, I wasn't going to take it, and then I was convinced by, someone that loved me, that maybe they thought I should take it. So anyway, I take the medication. It's during COVID, and I start not liking the way it's making me feel. Like, all of a sudden, I feel like there's things that I used to care about that I no longer care about. It just made me feel kind of like there's just a wall in front of me. And we didn't really have, like, doctors were not as available during those times of COVID. So I just stopped taking the medication. I had no idea that I couldn't do that. So when I stopped taking the medication, I started losing control. I would lash out on people, like, really badly, really, really badly. Like, people that I worked with, it's hard for me to even plan to do things. All of a sudden, I feel like I can't deal with stress at all. And even, like, it was at the time I was getting ready to retire, and I couldn't even take the steps. Like, there's a bunch of steps that you need to do to retire from the military. They always make that joke that it's easy to go in, but it's very difficult to come back out. But there's so many steps that you have to do at the end of your career, and I felt like I couldn't do those steps. I don't know why. It was like I was handicapped in that moment. I went into, I had to do, like, a doctor's appointment. It probably was I believe it was part of my retirement. And all of a sudden in there, I just started crying. And the doctor come in, and I was actually even trying to hide the fact that I was crying, but the doctor come in, and she's, surprised to find me there crying. And so she sent me to Fleet and Family Support Center. And I actually met a wonderful counselor there. As at my time of talking to her, and I just, told her my experience with the antidepressant that I was given. Told her that I do not want to be medicated. And so she told me, well, she knew Doc Veton. And she said, well, I know a therapist for you. And sent me to Doc Veton, and that's how I ended up at Warfighter Advance.
So then you came to an evolution at Warfighter Advance.
Yes.
Talk about that experience.
As soon as I pulled up here, I just felt a sense of calm. I did see Doc Veton, and obviously she's my therapist, so that obviously did give me some sense of calm. But it also just was the environment itself as well. Then when I started to meet the people and just get this sense of belongingness, a lot of walls that I had put up, especially during my career, I started to feel them coming down. I started to feel more open. I shared things with the group that I never imagined that I'd share with people. And a lot of the people that I met, I feel like is lasting friendships.
So after that week, you decided to join Warfighter Advance as a mentor.
I did, yes, I did.
Tell me what the experience of being a mentor has been, and also an instructor.
Well, the thing is, when something, you see something so great, and what it does for other people, myself included, of course, but what it does for people, you want to be a part of it, and you want to give back. So my time here has been just like seeing where people started and where they end up. It's just like this amazing feeling that you could be a part of that, and then especially seeing people come back and be mentors themselves. It just shows you how like many lives are being saved here.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us, Octavia, and thank you for your contribution to Warfighter Advance.
Thank you.
Joining me today is Matt Scassero. Matt has been a long-time participant with Warfighter Advance, one of the originals, a former board of director chair, and has been a member of the faculty for Warfighter Advance for many years. Mm-hmm. Thanks for talking to us today, Matt.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, Matt, tell us about your military background and your professional experience.
Sure. So I joined the Navy. I went to the Naval Academy, so right out of high school, was in. That was back in 1978. So I did a full career in the Navy, 27 years. I was an aviator, naval aviator, flight officer. So I spent a lot of time in carriers, deployed a lot, ended up as an air boss and aircraft carrier, had a great experience with the leadership aspects of that, just dealing with young sailors and Marines. A couple combat deployments in Desert Storm in Kosovo, and eventually retired in 2009, right here local in Maryland, stayed here in Maryland, and hooked up with Doc V during the last couple of years of my military experience. And then I, for no bad reasons, just all good reasons, I had done defense for my entire life pretty much. So I wanted to get as far away from it as possible to do something else and find out who I really am. So I actually went to work for a social nonprofit, people with disabilities, had a great experience there. And then this weird opportunity came up to work with the University of Maryland. So I've been with the University of Maryland for 10 years, doing some technical research management kind of work with drones and autonomous things, but also got into facilitating classes with college students, which has been truly rewarding. That's what I'm doing today, but been involved with Warfighter Advance all along.
When you come to Warfighter on a regular basis now, you come twice a week during the evolutions and speak to the warfighters about leadership. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we actually start day one because I'm blessed to be able to see them on Monday and Friday and see the difference between Mondays and Fridays in them. And we talk about the impact of leadership and learn about basic leadership kind of concepts, but really how does this apply in their situation for the reasons they're here for? And what difference did leadership make then in the situations they came through, whether it was a year ago or 30 years ago or further? And what is it making in their life now? So the impact of leadership, both at a group level, the traditional hierarchical definitions of leadership, but also personal leadership. How are they leading themselves? How did they lead themselves then? But how are they going to lead themselves even more importantly tomorrow and the next day and next year? And that's really where we try to end up is, what are you going to do about tomorrow as far as leadership and that personal leadership? How do you develop it and what do you do with it?
What kinds of differences do you see from Monday to Friday as you come in?
The energy, the smiles, but the energy between them and inside of themselves, confidence. There's a lot of, in Monday, there's a lot of shadows, a lot of questions, a lot of darkness to a lot of folks. Not in an overbearing kind of way, but just you sense it. And you're sensing not a lot of cohesion or energy between the group. Friday you come in, like today, we checked in, everybody was talking and sharing and having a good experience from the heart. And that's what you sense immediately is that energy buzzing amongst the group. But then on the faces, the individual faces, the brightness, the clarity. The questioning now is not, I'm questioning myself. It's, I'm questioning what life is going to be and what am I going to do about it? And they're good questions. They're constructive questions. So that's really the difference we see.
if you were to say something to some of the viewers or listeners to this podcast about what they might expect from Warfighter Advance, what would you say to them?
A positive, constructive delta difference. We are giving you information and tools and relationships that you can then walk out with the next day, the next hour, and actually use in your life. Whatever challenges you came through, whatever challenges you're still having, whatever challenges you'll experience in the future, here you're going to get good, solid, science-based information, but also you're going to build relationships with people, and you're going to get some walk-away tools that you can actually use in your family, in your with your coworkers at your workplace. In whatever situation you're in, you're going to walk away with tools that you can now use. And from my particular aspect with leadership, you're going to have the ability to know what you are about. And not saying no on day one, but you'll know what questions to ask and how to approach it and some things you can step through. We talk about the 3 C's and how does that fit into your life, and who else needs to know you? Who else can you rely on? What relationships do you want to build?
Well, thank you for sharing your information with us today, Matt, and thank you for your years of service to Warfighter Advance.
My privilege and honor.
This has been another episode of the Warfighter Advance podcast, Coming Home at Last. Thank you for joining us for the Warfighter Advance Coming Home at Last podcast. Warfighter Advance envisions a world where warfighters are fully restored through a non-medical process. To achieve that vision, Warfighter Advance sponsors 6 7-day retreats each year to which veterans and active duty service members can apply, and for no cost to the warfighter. If you or those you know are struggling with issues related to reintegration, please contact us through our website. We are dedicated to lead the way so that every warfighter has the information, tools, and support they need to successfully reintegrate. Until next time, this is Michael Arndt on behalf of Warfighter Advance.